in Gaza as grotesque as he repeated calls for an immediate ceasefire. David Lammy had earlier joined more than 20 foreign ministers in signing a joint statement calling for the release of all hostages and the resumption of aid deliveries. Speaking in the Commons, Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel joined the condemnations.
This situation has deteriorated beyond all rational comprehension. The daily reports of casualties seeking aid are appalling, and we utterly condemn these attacks. But our words and political statements of condemnation are not saving lives.
Israel says the letter is disconnected from reality. A man's been found guilty of murdering two men whose remains he tried to dump in suitcases more than 100 miles away. Justin Andres Mosquera killed Paul Longworth and Albert Alfonso and plotted to throw their remains off Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. A boy who died in a bus crash near Minehead in Somerset last Thursday has been named by police as 10-year-old Oliver Price. The coach slid down a 20-foot slope on its way back from a school trip. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 20 points at 90.12. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather largely cloudy with showers in central and western areas tonight. Generally dry elsewhere. A low of 11. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Monday's Cross Question on LBC. With us on the panel, to my left, Alex Davies-Jones, Labour Justice Minister and MP for Pontypridd. Have I said that right?
You haven't.
Thank goodness for that. Mark Garnier, to my ultimate right there, is Conservative Shadow Treasury Minister and MP for Wyre Forest. Sitting to my right, Hilary Wainwright, political activist and journalist, who's the founding co-editor of the left-wing magazine and website Red Pepper. And over to my left, Ali Miraj, LBC presenter, weekend 12 till 3. That's right, isn't it?
Very good, Ian. Thank you.
I know my schedule. They are here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850. And, of course, you can watch us on Global Player and the brand new LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
It's very rare that we have three people making their debut on the programme, but we do tonight, so welcome to all three of you. Obviously, Alan Miraj is a veteran on the programme. Let's go to our first caller. It's Robbie in Chelmsford. Hello, Robbie.
Good evening, all. My question is, why does the government prioritise protecting privatised water over the customers who end up paying for it?
Now, Sir John Cunliffe's landmark review into the governance of Britain's water providers did not consider whether or not the sector should be renationalised. Now, Alex, you told me about 2 minutes ago that before you became an MP, you used to work for a water company, so I think we have to come to you first.
I did indeed. I feel uniquely qualified here. I did. Before I was a Member of Parliament, I worked for Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water, who are a not-for-profit water company, so a unique business model. But as we've seen today with the announcement of the Cunliffe Review and over 88 recommendations, change is needed in the water sector desperately. For far too long, the bonuses have gone unchecked of these privatised water companies. They are getting away, quite frankly, with pollution at an untenable scale in our rivers, in our seas, in our lakes. And bills have risen far too high compared to the quality of the service that customers are getting. So that's why I'm really pleased today to see the bold reforms announced by the government around scrapping off water as a regulator and bringing in one single fit-for-purpose strengthened regulator, but then also by creating this water ombudsman. So for the first time ever, customers will have that champion in order to represent them against the interest of the big water companies, whether that's via complaints or issues that they may have, as well as a whole suite of recommendations that we're yet to look at. But I think we've been very clear since we came into office as well with bringing in the Water Special Measures Act, trying to prevent those big bonuses being handed out to water company bosses, that they aren't serving the interests of customers anymore, and that desperately needs to change.
I've always thought that Ofwat didn't really have enough powers to be a proper regulator, but others disagree with that. They say, no, it did have the powers, it just chose not to use them. What's your view?
I think, well, coming at this from both sides, so from being in the water industry and being on the receiving end of the fines that were handed down by Ofwat, or the recommendations handed down by Ofwat when you're in the water sector, you do feel actually that they're quite overbearing, that they are coming down on you quite hard. But now I've seen it from the other side, and being in government and also being a customer, as we all are, of water companies, I do feel like they haven't necessarily acted as swiftly or as robustly as we wanted to, which is why I'm pleased today that we have made that decision to scrap them and bring in that strengthened regulator, a proper fit-for-purpose regulator that will take them to task.
One thing which I think is very odd is that Steve Reid said this morning that he didn't receive Sir John Cunliffe's report until last night, so he read it overnight and then makes this announcement today. We can't have really digested a 456-page report overnight. Surely it would have been better to have sat on it for a bit and maybe then introduce some further, because I think he's only accepted 4 of the 88 recommendations.
4 of 88 thus far.
Why do it so quickly?
Well, I think it's very clear that where there is a need to act quickly and swiftly, then we will. And I'm pleased to see those decisions being made of those high-level recommendations today. But it is quite right, as you said, it's quite a lengthy document that Sir John Cunliffe has produced for government, 88 recommendations. It's right that we go through them all and see what is appropriate, what can be taken forward. I mean, there's a lot of consultation that's going to have to be undertaken with customers on this. But I think the 4 that we have accepted, we're right to do so, and it's right that we get on with delivering for the public who have, quite frankly, been fed up of poor service and pollution spills.
Now, Hilary Wainwright, I'm suspecting that you might want to use the N-word here and sort of nationalisation before anyone else thinks that I'm going down a different path. Is the government taking the right approach?
No, and the questioner is right. It's puzzling why it's not thinking about public ownership. I'd say public ownership rather than, nationalisation, fine, but the emphasis must be on serving the public. I mean, that's what's gross about the water, what's happening now. You know, these chief executives getting like nearly $1 million a year when they're meant to be public servants, serving the public, and are not. And the regulator, firstly, the Cunliffe wasn't allowed to consider nationalisation or public ownership, which is really bizarre, not very democratic. I mean, you'd have thought when 80% of the public want public ownership, that surely should be on the agenda of anybody. Well,
80% of the public might want to bring back hanging. That doesn't make it right.
No, but it still makes it something that needs to be considered. And the fact that, this is the result not of just prejudice, it's the result of experience and debate and argument. And, the experience of the sewage is the ultimate sort of...
But Sir John said, I saw him do an interview this morning where he was saying it's not the structure of the industry that matters here, whether it's in the public or private sector, because Scottish Water is in the public sector. Scottish Water has problems with sewage as well. I mean, it doesn't make it right just to bring it back into the public sector. So it's a bit of a red herring, isn't it? Because it would cost so much.
A red herring, because one of the key problems that face the regulator is getting the information. And that's partly because of all the commercial protection of private companies as far as information is concerned. The people who've exposed a lot of the sewage problems is the public, is people like Ilkley Clean Water or Ilkley Clean River, people who are swimming and face all the shit, literally. And they're driven to find out what's really going on.
But
and if you had a public body, then just to finish, the point about the public ownership is not structure, it's like bringing the public back in so they can investigate what's going on, because it would mean that the executives and so on were accountable to the public, who could ask questions and drive.
But the only reason, apart from if people are swimming, as you say, in the river, they notice it. But the only reason we know that our rivers are so polluted now is because the last government brought in legislation to make it compulsory for the water companies to measure the amount of pollution, which we didn't before, and they still don't in Scotland, I understand, under public ownership. So we do have more information than we used to put pressure on them.
Yes, but not enough, because you can't really control, in my opinion, what you don't own. I mean, I think ownership would mean there was a more direct line of accountability and, bringing the water companies to account and getting them to change, because it would be subject to parliamentary debate, be public debate, like here we have it on the media and so on. That would all be part of what was driving the companies. Whereas now, the companies are beholden to the shareholders. They have to meet their interests. So massive dividends, massive profits is what's driving their policies.
Mark?
Well, so there's a whole load of stuff that's come out of that. So I think the most important point is, Ian, you're absolutely right to mention that point, that back in 2013 we legislated in order to make sure that these companies were being monitored in terms of the output of sewage. We've also legislated in order to make sure that if any company breaks any laws or whatever, the senior people can't get a bonus at all. So we have intervened at a certain level on all of this type of stuff. We also have the environment.
They continue to get these massive salaries.
Sure, but you've got to get people to come and run these businesses. Even if it's in the state sector, you're going to still have a lot of highly paid people to come and run them, because they've got to get some reward for it.
Yes, but other countries in Europe, they have way more reasonable salary levels.
We can argue about that, but one of the interesting things, which I think the government could have looked at, is the idea of having mutual ownership, so rather like a building society where the customers own it and they can take more interest in it. For me, being a representative of people in Worcestershire, where we have Severn Trent is relatively good. The idea that my constituents were going to have to find £16.4 billion to bail out Thames Water is pretty horrific. But look, I think the other thing that's come out of this is, I think the government has announced £104 billion worth of investment into the sector. Big tick, we like that. There's going to be a whole load of money going into the infrastructure. But where's it going to come from? Ultimately, it's going to come out of the pockets, actually right now, of shareholders who in many cases, Hilary, are people like you who've got pension funds. So the pension schemes are investing into this. If it doesn't come out of the pension schemes, it's going to have to come out of taxation, or it's going to have to come out of bills, or it's going to have to come out of borrowing. But collectively, we are all going to have to find £104 billion out of our state wealth in order to build up this infrastructure.
Well, this is coming out of private sector investment for the vast majority of it, and to fix the issue that is causing the pollution in the first place. So it's fixing those pipes, it's fixing the sewage system, it's preventing the, sewage overspill pipes into the sea, into the rivers. And I also, as well as also coming from the sector originally, I also represent one of the constituencies that suffers from extreme flooding and weather events that is only getting worse. It's not getting better. So we need to be able to deal with this, as well as building new reservoirs. We haven't built any for decades in this country. We need to think about where our clean drinking water is coming from. All of this that the water companies should have been investing in, instead of paying their bosses and their shareholders, immense salaries, whilst not fixing the infrastructure.
Ali?
A little bit confused about this conversation so far, because fundamentally you've got Sir John Cunliffe saying that they're going to have to be inflation-busting increases in water bills, on the one hand, just saying this today, and on the other hand, you've got Steve Reed saying that there's going to be a water revolution and that customers are not going to have to pay the gargantuan increase in bills that they've had to face in the past. So I'm totally confused by this. This is going to be yet again kicking the can down the road. Look, someone's got to level with the public and say that if you want to have a water industry that works, you're going to have to stump up more cash. Now, that's unfashionable, but it's the fact. Now, the way this works is, if you want to go nationalise everything, as Hilary does, there are two things to bear in mind. One...
She hasn't said that, but...
Well, OK.
Well, I'm talking about public ownership because we've got to think about other models. I mean, just very quickly, so we can correct that sort of myth of nationalisation being state, or public ownership being state controlled. I mean, my idea, not just mine, lots of people's idea of public ownership, it would be, the public being on the boards. I mean, mutual is one thing, but I think that that if you have a public body, then you can have a debate about how it should be run and involve the people locally in running those boards.
That's exactly what
I understand the point, but a lot of people still talk about nationalisation, particularly on the left and particularly within the Labour Party. Now, this is a very seductive idea, but unfortunately it bears no relation to reality at all. And it bears no relation to reality for two reasons. One, who's going to stump up the cash to compensate the owners of these companies that are in the private sector to the tune of billions, right? Number one. Number two, if you actually go down the road of public ownership, nationalisation, whatever it is, which investor internationally, and we're talking about international pension funds, private equity, whatever, who's going to come and invest in this country? Who's going to invest in the battery energy storage? Who's going to invest in the carbon capture and storage? Who's going to invest in the onshore and offshore renewables that we need? The answer is no one. Because once you have a situation where people don't have faith in your ability to actually earn a decent return, they're not going to invest. And one of the things that, and I speak to investors all the time, one of the things that they have when it comes to water is a regulator that they felt was not really working very well. So I think it's welcome that the government has done some reforms there. But the other thing investors want is stability. They want stability in terms of the outlook, and there are 5-year regulatory periods, and they want stability of returns. Now, Alex talks about the fact that water company bosses shouldn't be paid these massive bonuses. Fair enough. But then why is Steve Reed saying that he's not going to interfere in bonuses? I'll tell you why. Because they're private companies, many of them, and it's not for the government to interfere in the remuneration policies of private companies. That is a question for shareholders.
We have intervened in bonuses, though. We took special action.
Steve Reed was saying yesterday he doesn't want to intervene.
No, that's in the salaries. I think that's very different. But we have taken action to prevent these bonuses from being paid out to these water company bosses. And we've also added prison sanctions to them when they don't comply with this.
But they're now apparently suggesting that the bonuses should be turned into salary.
Yes, exactly that.
Which is the problem. And I think I'd echo the comments of the water minister this morning, my good friend Emma Hardy, when she said that they need to read the room. Look at this, what's happening. I know a lot of my colleagues today have written to the boss here and asking him not to accept this, to look at what is being done here in your name and how customers are having to front the bills for this.
I understand this, and this is all very emotive, and I understand why, because people obviously don't want sewage in their rivers, and I understand. I don't want sewage in my basement, which got flooded as well, by the way, which cost me the best part of 30 grand.
Which is
insured, but a lot, right? So my insurance premium has gone through the roof. So I understand all this. But fundamentally, we need to level with the public and say you're going to have to pay a lot more money for your water because there's Victorian pipage in this country that is completely unfit for purpose.
It hasn't been invested in.
Massively.
But also, Ali, if it was public, then the value that's created that now goes to the shareholders would go into investment. You see, I think, making it public isn't going to cost millions. I mean, it can be bought at the value, the current value, market value of these companies. Now, the market value of Thames Water is virtually zilch.
I understand, Hilary, but you've got Sir John Cunliffe, right, who's an ex-deputy governor of the Bank of England, exactly. These people he's an experienced guy. He was talking about the fact that he lived through public ownership of water companies, and he called it the dirty man of Europe. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the guy who's just written the report that has been
yes, but that wasn't inherent in public ownership. It was badly managed. But, if you look at 90% of public of water across the world is publicly owned, and there are some good companies
but in
and some
France
not.
and Germany, apparently they have bigger problems with sewage than we do, and they're publicly owned. Do we not? We need to wrap this up in a second. But should we not put all of the water companies in the same basket? Because we hear about Thames Water, one or two of the others who've clearly got massive problems and have performed very badly. But there are actually, in some of the rest of the country, some decent water companies. We shouldn't lock them all in the same basket.
There is an issue about the way this. So I'm a big fan of privatisation. I kind of saw this during the 1980s, and I saw things improve immeasurably as a result of privatisation. But the one thing that the water companies don't have is competition, and that competition piece is incredibly important to get efficiency. So you need to have a hybrid form of sort of market dynamics going on within it.
No, but
Ian, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we'd be better off keeping it in one form of private ownership or another, even if that is a mutualisation, which I do think should be looked at because of that. But there are a lot of.
I really want to challenge this idea that the market equals efficiency, because you need some kind of dynamic, but democracy can also be a force.
It doesn't work.
Mark, come on.
It doesn't work.
Mark, let's be serious, right? You're an advocate of privatisation. That's fine. The reason why you have a regulator in the water sector is because they are effectively monopolies, right? You don't have competition. That's the point, because they're covering regions, and that's why you have a monopoly to protect the interests of consumers. So
and
that
they represent the public good.
Yeah, so the investors can earn a regulated return that is reasonable, and the regulator does their job by holding the to account. That's how it works.
Well, I reckon that this has been the best discussion on water that I've heard in the last few weeks on the media. So congratulations to you all for that. Let's continue this level of debate with our next question. But you'll have to wait a couple of minutes. It's 8:20.
This is LBC.
details.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
I think I'm going to get my colleagues back at the ranch to clip that and put it up on YouTube, because I think it's a really good primer as to what the arguments are on here. So very impressed with this panel so far. Let's see if they can impress me on Gaza. No name on this one. Do put your name if you send in a text. Emily Thornberry, she chairs the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, has said that it's time for Britain to join 75% of the world in officially recognising the state of Palestine. Is she right? Well, at the moment, 147 member states of the United Nations out of the 193 in total recognise a Palestinian state. Hilary Wainwright.
I think this would be a good thing, but it's not the main thing now. I think the main thing that Britain can do now is stop arming Israel. You know, it's still, it withdrew 30 out of 350 licenses, but it's still providing parts for the F-35 jets that are bombing children, etc., every day. I mean, it's got to stop that sort of military support. I mean, the question of supporting the state of Israel is important for any diplomatic
state of Palestine.
move. State of Palestine. Sorry.
Well, and Israel, but
sorry, the state of Palestine is key to the negotiations and to recognising the Palestinians as equal partners in that negotiation. I mean, recognising their rights is got to be the starting point of any negotiation. But I just think it's not that, in a way, that the first thing before anything like that is stopping arming Israel.
Is it, though, a bit performative to recognise a state of Palestine which doesn't actually exist? I mean, it's sort of the equivalent of virtue signalling, isn't it? I mean, there is no state of Palestine, so how can you recognise it?
No, but there should be. I mean,
well, yeah, but you say all sorts of things should be.
In a way, it's got to be tied in with opposition to the occupation, because the occupation is premised on the idea that the people of Israel people of Palestine don't have any rights and aren't a state. Because once you say the state of Israel, the state of Palestine, sorry, you've got to. I know, sort of. But the state of Palestine, then you're accepting that an occupation of another state is wrong.
But when you've got both sides here, neither of them wanting a two-state solution, that's why I say it's performative.
Well, it can be a step. To me, I prefer a single state in which the rights of both and all religious groups and all other groups are recognised. But I think that recognising the state of Palestine is a step towards the negotiations that could lead to a single state.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, Emily Thornberry, I think, made the point when she was on the news today, exactly about that negotiating point. So if you, as a UK, which kind of the sixth biggest economy on the planet, fourth biggest military, want to try and get some leverage out of this, and the leverage would be to try to get the Israeli hostages released. So that would be kind of first and foremost. Do that, and in return, you recognise Palestine as an independent state. Then you've achieved something very tangible out of it. But I think just going ahead and recognising it as an independent state without getting something back would probably not be a good idea.
Ali Miraj.
Look, I tend to think that it is completely performative, and it makes people in the West, like us sitting in the studio, feel good about ourselves when we talk about a Palestinian state. I mean, this conversation has been going on for decades. You can't have a conversation seriously about any state whatsoever or any peace talks until you have people around the table who want to talk peace. On the one hand, you've got Hamas, who killed 1,200 Israelis on October the 7th. On the other hand, you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, supported by some really quite odd people who are absolutely hell-bent not only on getting revenge for what happened, and that's understandable to a degree, but it's not helping Israel's security. But worse than that, they actually want to see Palestinians just literally wiped off from where they live. I mean, they want to relocate them to third countries. I mean, this is what Bezalel Smotrich has said in terms. And now you've got a situation where the families of the victims themselves on the Israeli side, the hostage families, are saying that this is a complete transgression, the way that Israel's carrying on here, of Israel's own democratic norms and values. And this is not helping secure Israel's own security at all. So we can make ourselves feel good about it. And Emmanuel Macron, who's, he's a player on the international stage, was here the other week. He wants it. fine, but it's going to make no difference at all. And let's remember that Benjamin Netanyahu himself was instrumental in providing or channeling support from Qataris to Hamas to provide a counterpoint to the Palestinian Authority, because he never wanted to have a state, right? We know that. We also know that Hamas wants to see Israel eradicated from the face of the earth. So it's just a non-starter, quite frankly. So it's a bit like Greta going to Gaza in the boat. Makes us feel good, decent for Instagram. Absolutely no difference will be made by it whatsoever.
Alex?
I think we all want the war to stop. Ian, I don't think anybody can see the images coming out of the region and not be totally horrified. It's why I'm pleased to see David Lammy condemn in no uncertain terms the actions of the Israeli government over the past few days. We need to get aid into Gaza desperately, and it's clear that is not being carried out by the Israeli government in a sustainable and safe way. So that needs to be desperately looked at. We need the hostages released and we need a ceasefire. But we also do need to recognise two states. I think we all want that. I don't think anybody is saying we don't want to recognise a safe and secure Israel and then a independent, democratic Palestinian state on the other side. I think that is the only way forward for the future of that region. But as others have said on this panel, it has to be realistic. And we recognise that we can't do that alone. It would potentially be performative. I could sit here tonight and declare that I recognise a Palestinian state. It doesn't make it
You'd
so.
You'd probably be sacked from the government if you did that.
It doesn't make it so. It doesn't make it happen, does it? And what will make it happen is working with our allies, working on this conference that Saudi Arabia and France are leading, on that recognition, on really looking at how we can do this diplomatically together, because that is the only thing that is going to work in order to achieve what ultimately we all want in the region.
I've got a little practical suggestion before we start grandstanding about Palestinian states. Why don't we just allow independent journalists into Gaza to actually report what's going on? How about that?
Seems reasonable to me.
That's an important step, but I think the other important step is to actually sanction Israel in the way that, we've sanctioned, and the US has sanctioned Putin and Russia, who've been committing crimes.
They have sanctioned certain individuals.
We have, yeah. Well, but not, we continue to trade, we continue to invest, we continue to arm. Honestly, nothing would satisfy me until we stop selling those. But
Hilary,
again,
look, symbolically, I agree with you. But the only individual.
But it's not a symbolic matter.
Well, but it is, because the only individual.
We buy a lot of arms from Israel anyway.
But the other thing is, look, Israel is also providing a lot of. They'll be providing counterintelligence to us. They'll be providing. I'm sure that there's a very close defence relationship.
Well, we should end that relationship.
But the only individual in the world that will have any sway on Israel is Donald Trump.
Yes, but if we showed the way, it would have some impact on.
Do you think it would have any impact? Because I think
obviously he's he's going to do what he wants, but it'll help if there's some added pressure from us.
But do you not think
us and then other European countries? The biggest amount of trade to Israel is from Europe, and so if Europe stopped trading with Israel, it'd really have to.
But do you not think the emotional way that David Lammy has been handling this in recent weeks, particularly that initial statement in the House of Commons, that has meant that we have absolutely zero influence on the Israeli government now? Now, I don't think we had a lot before, but we now have absolutely none.
But, we're not going to have an impact by, whispering in their ear. It's going to be the pressure that our action builds.
Well, often you can through diplomacy. It is a little bit about personal relationships, whispering in people's ears. It's not about public declaration.
No, but it's going to be public pressure. It's going to be the pressure of Israeli people.
But I think the bigger thing is, and look, I speak as someone who regards himself as a friend of Israel. And I can tell you, I've got a lot of flack and personal abuse and some pretty vitriolic attacks on the back of saying that, right? But I do, because I do believe that Israelis have a right to live in peace and security. The thing that is actually happening here, and maybe this is what Hamas wanted, because I can't really rationalise why they did what they did, because they've got 60,000 of their compatriots dead and 92% of the residential buildings flattened. But what is seeming to be happening now is that there's a change of mood, and there's a change of mood particularly amongst the young, and it's pretty much worldwide. So in the long term, I don't think this bodes well for Israel in the long term at all, because if even its friends are struggling to support its actions, and I am, quite honestly, I really am. And once you're talking about relocating people forcibly, I'm sorry, I part company there. I can't defend that. So I just think Israel is not doing itself any favours whatsoever. There was a very good piece by Matthew Said in the Sunday Times talking about exactly this. And he got it bang on, and he said at the end, I mean, it was a very balanced article. It was almost pain. You could see the pain coming out in the article. And he said, I implore the world at the end, get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, he's not the only one. Hamas is as culpable, but you can't make peace with people who just do not want peace to be made. He wants to stay in because he's basically got a situation where he's facing a corruption case up to 15 years in jail.
Well, yet another brilliant discussion from this panel. You've got a lot to live up to in the third quarter, I'll tell you that for nothing. It's 8:32 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines from Daisy Steele.
The Foreign Secretary's called Israel's Gaza aid scheme a grotesque spectacle, which is depriving people of human dignity. David Lammy's been speaking in the Commons after the UK, France and more than 20 other countries demanded the war must end now. A double-decker bus has crashed into a bridge in Manchester. North West Ambulance Service has declared a major incident with 15 people taken to hospital. One person is reported to be critically injured and 2 others are seriously hurt. A man will be sentenced in October after being convicted of the murder of 2 men whose bodies he left in suitcases in Bristol. 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and Paul Longworth, who was 71, were discovered near to Clifton Suspension Bridge in July last year. LBC weather largely cloudy with showers in central and western areas tonight, generally dry elsewhere, a low of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
Details.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:34. Let me reintroduce our panel. Alex Davies-Jones, Labour Justice. You can't get much more Welsh name than that, can you?
No, absolutely not.
Labour Justice Minister and MP for Pontypridd. Mark Garnier is Conservative Shadow Treasury Minister and MP for Wyre Forest. Where is Wyre Forest for the uninitiated?
It is the most northerly constituency in Worcestershire. It's on the River Severn, bisects it right down the middle. Kidderminster is my main town, and I've got Stourport on Severn, which is the only town which has 2 rivers in its name, and Bewdley.
Did you know that James O'Brien comes from Kidderminster?
No, I didn't actually.
Well, there you go.
Oh,
Hilary Wainwright is now it says here, political activist and journalist. Do you self-describe as that?
I describe myself in many different ways, but I'd include those 2.
Good, well, that's all right then. And she's a founding co-editor of Red Pepper magazine. And Ali Miraj, as you all know, presents on LBC at weekends between 12 and 3. Now, Robert is in Dulwich. Hello, Robert.
Good evening, everyone, to the panel, and to Ian, of course. Look, my question is about Epping and what's going on there, and I think the thoughts of those communities are probably echoed up and down the country. And what does the panel think about that, and really the authorities' response to what's going on? Because I don't think it's a very good one.
Now, just as a bit of background to this, 6 people were arrested last night during a protest outside a hotel in Epping housing asylum seekers, with Essex police condemning what it is described as mindless thuggery. There was also violence in the same location during a protest on Thursday night, with the police force saying that responding to these demonstrations in Epping have so far costed £100,000. Now, I think I'm right in saying that these protests are in response to an arrest made of an asylum seeker who's accused of a sexual crime. So I think that's what sparked it off in the first place. Ali, this is not the first time that we've seen this type of protest, is it?
No, and we all remember the summer protests that occurred last year. Look, no one is going to, least of all me, going to defend mindless thuggery on the streets in Epping or anywhere else in this country. It's absolutely disgraceful, and those people should be seeing the full force of the law. But Nigel Farage has come out today and talked about us being very close to civil disobedience in this country. And I think he's actually got a point, because this asylum issue and the lack of control on the part of successive governments, it's not a Labour thing, it's also a Tory thing, has been a feature for years now, for years. And it's not just the illegal migration, and I know illegal is very emotive for some people, but frankly, if you're fleeing persecution, you should go into the first safe country you go to, not pay a people smuggler the best part of $8,000 to put your life at risk in a dinghy to come to this country. I've never really understood that. Many of whom, by the way, are single men. I've never really understood this. But anyway, there's a legal issue and there's an illegal issue. And the asylum thing in particular is really upsetting people, because I tell you what it is. One is that people don't like free riders. And number two, people like to have a sense of fairness in this country. That is a great British trait and value, and they feel that people are abusing the system, and that people who are here who are struggling to get by are having to watch people stay in asylum hotels, and they don't like it. Now, some people are genuine, absolutely fleeing persecution. We've had a long history in this country of supporting them. I think of Idi Amin and the people who got kicked out during that period. We've always supported people genuinely fleeing persecution. Maybe we should do more. But this system is broken. It's not working. Keir Starmer talked about smashing the gangs with great fanfare during the election campaign. No gangs have been smashed. The numbers have gone up.
Alex, you were about to tut.
Yeah, I think that's an unfair characterisation on your latter point, Ali, and I was going to agree with you on much of what you said. Look, I think the right to protest in this country is one that is fundamental, and we should respect it at all costs. However, mindless thuggery, vandalism, violence and attacks on the police force are not that. That does cross the line, and it is right that this has been condemned, and the police should have all of our support in tackling that. But I think there are some genuine concerns in this country, and those concerns have a right to be listened to by individuals who are worried about the use of asylum hotels, for example, who are worried about the illegal crossings in the Channel, and we are taking action to address that. At the height of the Conservative government, there were 400 asylum hotels in use. There are now down to just over 200 hotels. We are bearing down on that backlog. Yes, not quickly enough, as some people would like, but we are taking action there. We are taking action to directly smash the gangs. We've signed this, treaty with France that will pilot one in, one out, actually actively returning them across the Channel for the first time ever. That's something that hasn't been done before.
You did away with Rwanda, though.
Well, we have got other deterrents, and that is one of them that we're bringing in. Rwanda was a gimmick. Rwanda wasn't going to work. It was a waste of money.
But it was working.
Before we go through the whole gamut of the whole system of asylum seeking, which we haven't got time to do, I do want to concentrate on Epping, because I think one of the points that assuming that these protesters were all from the local community, they weren't rent-a-mob, I think it's entirely understandable, and you will hopefully see this as a Justice Minister, that if local communities see people coming into their community and then they see someone being arrested allegedly for a sexual crime, that is going to concern them. And they have every right to be concerned about that, don't
I think we all need to be concerned about the levels of violence against women and girls in this country. As the minister responsible for that, it is a national epidemic. We are right to declare it an emergency that needs tackling, and I welcome anyone taking an interest in how we tackle that. But mindless thuggery and vigilante policing isn't a way to do that. We have to have faith in the criminal justice system again, and I recognise that criminal justice system has been brought to rack and ruin, whether it is faith and respect in the police, whether it's the courts to do their job, whether it's the prisons being full, and we are slowly trying to rebuild that as a government. Every single part of that inheritance that we received, we are taking action to address. But this isn't going to be done in a vacuum either. This needs all of us. It's on all of us to take responsibility for what we're facing.
Mark?
I think when you see this violent thuggery, it is the tip of an iceberg of a massive amount of unrest. As Adi, you said, a lot of people are very, very unhappy about what's going on. They are illegal migrants insofar as they are arriving under illegal methods. But I think the idea that you can smash the gangs, you smash one gang, it really merely creates an opportunity for several other gangs to fill that space. And so you're not going to deal with it that way. You have to tackle it through smashing the business model. And if you think about it, for £8,000, you get delivered to the UK, you get free accommodation in a 3-star hotel for as long as it takes for you to use free legal advice until such point as you stand quite a good chance of actually being given a right to remain and a job in this country. It is an incredibly, if you think about getting that, just in a normal sort of environment, £8,000, you get an awful lot for your money. So we have to break that model. And at the end of the day, the Rwanda scheme was beginning to work before it even started, for the simple reason that we know that there were migrants fleeing across the border into Southern Ireland who were trying to get away from it. The numbers were coming down. Unless you have some way of putting people off, it's not going to work. And actually, one thing which I heard the other day, and I haven't had anything more from this, is almost having, for those ones who do get asylum, who do win the right to remain, get a charge, rather like a university fee charge. They then have to pay back the cost of the accommodation, the cost of the legal fees, as a way of just putting a value to it, which might make them think twice about leaving France to come to the UK.
You were shaking your head there.
Well, just because it's... Rwanda was a gimmick. It wasn't working as a deterrent. What's going to work is actually taking direct action, whether that's deporting people who have no legal right to be here, which we are doing as a government. I'm really proud that we've actually deported more foreign national offenders.
So the
we
Albanian
have
scheme
deported those without the legal right to be here. We've signed this new treaty with France on actually returning those with no legal right to be here. It's about setting up those return agreements with other countries like Albania, like Iraq, looking at how we disrupt those business models. It's direct action. This isn't wasting billions on gimmicks.
The other thing, what's really going to smash the gangs is finding legal ways of enabling asylum seekers to come and get permission. There's a huge backlog which needs to be properly cleared, and the government should be putting resources into that so that there can be, not enough, so there can be proper safe ways.
Hilary, have you ever been to an asylum hotel and met with them?
I'm not in a hotel. I've met asylum seekers.
So I had 2 hotels in my constituency, and I went in and met some of these young men. They were all young men, and ignoring the fact they're illegal and all the rest of it, I thought, actually these are quite decent people. What they want to do is they want to do better for themselves. They've come across, they want to bring their families over. In every sense, they were ambitious young men who wanted to make a better life for themselves. Now, there's nothing wrong with that until you start breaking the law and until you start coming here illegally and trying to game another system which is designed to help people which are...
So they were economic migrants, is that what you're saying?
Not every single one of them, but
they wouldn't break the law.
But they're economic migrants in many cases. That's the point. They're young men who want to do better for themselves. They're coming from pretty horrible places, but do you know what? France is not a horrible place. France is, they're economic migrants who want to come to the UK, largely because we have a system which seems to work for them to come here, but also because they speak English. They don't always speak French or German or Norwegian or wherever else they could go.
And we need more labour.
Hilary, I just wanted to ask.
That could be done under the legal system.
But it could, yes, but the legal system needs to be extended, and then publicity needs to be given to the communities like in Dover where they're being welcomed. I think the other thing which builds on what Alex said about the fact there's so much abuse, sexual abuse against women anyway, that this identifying of an immigrant, an asylum seeker who's sexually abused and is a sort of and a big anger at that is partly a kind of culture of demonisation of asylum seekers, so that it's implied that sexual abuse is rampant amongst immigrants. It's not.
Just a minute, Ali. But if you look, I got into trouble over the weekend about a call I took on One Understanding for Matt Fry on Saturday, where a lady phoned up, quite an elderly lady, and was going on about sort of. These Afghans bring their ways with them, and I sort of started to interrogate her on what she meant by that. And I won't go into the whole detail of it, but then people sort of then sent me figures that showed that from some countries, particularly Afghanistan actually, the incidence of sexual assaults is much higher among some of the people from these other countries than maybe others that come into the country. Now, I don't believe that all Afghans that come here want to rape British women or anything remotely. But if you have these statistics, you can't ignore them.
Yeah, but the statistics here are not good.
No, 3 women a week are murdered at the hands of men in this country.
Yeah,
that's a fact that we need to address.
Probably worse than Afghanistan.
No. I just think, look, I understand this, and you're absolutely right, Alex, that there's a problem with misogyny in the country. Absolutely. But people, if you get below the surface, people in places like Epping will be thinking, look, there may be people coming into this country whose values do not align with my own. Now, we can just poo-poo that and just say, well, this is all wrong and it offends our liberal sensibilities.
And we have a huge variety of values here.
I know we do. But one of the things is if you're and not, of course, I think Ian makes the point that not every person coming from one of these countries is going to be like assaulting women. Of course not. But we need to think about this and how we handle all these things very carefully. Now, to your point, Hilary, that you made about legal routes. The thing with this legal routes thing is there'll always be more supply of asylum seekers than we can actually accommodate in this country. I mean, which legal routes will you decide? Afghanistan? Eritrea,
Ukraine.
Yemen. There are any number of countries in the world where people want to legally come to this country and claim asylum. So you're going to have to be honest and say, if you want to have legal routes, fine. You're going to have a cap. You're going to have a cap. Yeah. We don't have. There could be millions of people that want to come into this country because of conflict, or indeed climate change. Now is another issue. How are we going to accommodate them all?
Right, I'm going to leave that question hanging because it's 8:47.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Alex Davies-Jones, Mark Garnier, Hilary Wainwright and Ali Miraj taking your questions. Here's a text question from Michael who says, if the state pension was means tested, why would anyone approaching retirement with a modest savings pot save even more for their retirement, thus potentially making themselves ineligible for the state pension? Mark?
That's a really good question. I mean, the one thing you don't want to do is to put people off putting as much money as you possibly can into your pension. And I think it was Adam Smith who said that the eighth great wonder of the world was compound interest. And we have a fundamental problem that people aren't putting enough money into their pensions. Right now, we have something like 3 million people who are self-employed, more than that, who aren't saving for their pensions. Auto-enrolment is good, but people are not putting enough money into it. Young people today are being challenged with a whole load of different things. They want to save for a mortgage, for a deposit for a house. They need to put money into pensions because that's going to do them the most amount of good when they come to retiring. The retirement age by, I think it was 2046, is going to be at 67, 68 years old. That's going to be quite young, I think, by the time some of the young people now are going to be retiring. It's a fundamental problem. We've got the pension schemes bill, which is going through Parliament at the moment. It starts its committee stage in September, and I'm leading for the opposition on that. It's a big problem. I think the government's right to bring about this, but there are certain things they're missing. There were certain ideas that we could have done, for example, the lifetime pot, which is where you basically have a single pot which you move around rather than having multiple pots. The pension dashboard needs to be brought about as soon as we possibly can. We need to encourage more people to save. It's as simple as that, and we should not.
It's a bit difficult though when interest rates are so low. I mean, when you and I were in our 20s, interest rates were 5, 6, 7% on average. Hilary.
Yeah, I mean, I think given austerity and all the financial pressures, I mean, people will save, what they can, but it's actually really difficult to save at the moment. I find it difficult to save anyway. Even though I, need to, given I'm on a state pension, which isn't enough. But I think also, I'd say don't raise the retirement age. There's this idea that somehow retirement means, you just live the life of Riley. Whereas I think a key thing about retirement, from the observing friends and relations of mine that are over 65, is grandparenting and looking after kids, and that's crucial, and that means you've got to be active, you've got to be mobile, which really means you need to be retired well before your 70s. I'd say don't let the retirement age go any higher than 67.
Okay.
And just on the question of the next generation, which I think obviously is a problem because it's really important they get a good pension. And I think we shouldn't be sacrificing the present generation or cutting their pension. We should be dealing with taxation properly. We should be dealing with taxing those who've got assets of over 3 million, which would produce
3 million. I usually use 10 million.
10 million. Well, but I mean, let's start lower. Because 3 million's pretty. You can be taxed.
But you can't tax non-liquid assets.
Anyway, we're not going to go into that. Okay. Alex.
Well, I'm pleased to hear Mark say that you shouldn't be means testing the state pension, because I think, Ian, you will remember that Kemi Badenoch has actually said something similar to you, that she's not against looking at means testing the state pension. So I'm pleased to hear that ruled out.
I mean, she was actually sitting in that very seat when she said something. It wasn't that, but it was interpreted as
it indicated that it could be, yes. And could you means test the state pension? So I'm pleased to hear that being ruled out by the opposition. However, it is good that we've relaunched the Pensions Commission today as a Labour government, looking at exactly what can we do to encourage people to save more, to think about their pensions. They can think about what they do in retirement. I know loads of my peers, it's not something they can think about for many of the reasons that Hilary's outlined. They haven't got that money to save, so it's something we need to think about. And the last time the Pensions Commission was established in 2006, it actually did bring in a lot of really good positive change and conversation around pensions, whether that was introducing the automatic enrolment into pension scheme, which has enabled people to actually have a pension and a savings pot. And we do need to look at this because it's something that does need addressing.
Ali.
Pensions are a ticking time bomb. We've got an ageing population in this country. We're not alone in that. We've got a falling birth rate below the replacement rate at the moment. We have got a serious structural problem here. The only way to address this is to, unfortunately, sorry, Hilary, people are going to have to work longer, unfortunately. And I also think we have to look at the sacred cow, the triple lock, because I know that there was a massive outcry over the winter fuel payment, and there's a reversal of policy on that. But realistically, I think there's two things. One, we just can't afford it. And two, it's causing a sense of intergenerational unfairness. So I think both of those things have to be looked at.
Just one additional thing.
No. We're going to fit another question in, Hilary, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Even if you do, we're going to do it anyway. James in Ayr says, he's actually on the phone. Hello, James.
Yeah, hello Ian. I was very sympathetic to the cause of the miners in the 1980s, but what's going to be achieved by an inquiry into the events at Orgreave 40 years later?
Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has announced a national inquiry into violent events which took place outside the Orgreave coking plant in Rotherham in South Yorkshire on the 18th of June 1984, when more than 100 picketers and police officers were injured during clashes which were part of the miners' strike. Well, I'm going to start with Alex, because you have a special reason to be interested in this.
I do have a very special to be interested in this. My dad was at the Battle of Orgreave. He was a miner. He was there on that day. And the stories of the 84-85 25 miners' strike are part of the reason why I entered politics in the first place. So I am absolutely overjoyed and thrilled that we've delivered on the manifesto commitment and announced today a national inquiry into what happened at Orgreave. Because to answer James's point, what's the point in having one? Because we need to know the truth. We deserve to know the truth about what happened then, what happened with South Yorkshire Police on that day. We deserve to have the justice delivered for what happened to the miners during the strike. It's something that's fundamentally important, not just to my community, but to communities and mining communities across the United Kingdom about what happened at that period in time. And it's about time that we actually uncovered what happened.
And Arthur Scargill, I think, is 94 years old. I wonder if he'll be called to give evidence at that inquiry. Because was he there? I can't remember. I do remember him being marched off by the police. Was it there or somewhere else?
Yeah, I think he was buttoned as well.
Yeah.
Was he?
So many were.
Ali?
I have some sympathy with what Alex says. Look, the state's not in the best place when it comes to these kind of issues. You think of Hillsborough and the amount of cover-ups that went on there, and it just absolutely was
coincidentally South Yorkshire Police.
Well, indeed, exactly.
Is it coincidentally?
Well, look, so I understand. Look, public inquiries take a long time. They cost a lot of money. I'm not sure what will be achieved now, other than what Alex has just said, justice for the people involved and the truth. And I think, given where we are with successive governments and a sense of lack of trusted institutions, maybe there is something in it.
Hilary?
Well, I think also there's been legal judgments. Alex will know more, but I think there was a legal judgment against the South Yorkshire Police when the NUM, I think, took it to the courts. So even more reason for the inquiry when it's already been shown.
Looked at once, yes.
But, okay, let me add some controversy in this one as well. I mean, I could understand it if it was 1988 or 1992 doing this, but 41 years on, really?
Justice has no time limit. Why shouldn't we know the truth and uncover what happened then? It matters. It still matters to those communities.
Let's have one into the Peterloo massacre in 1815 then.
Well, this was a manifesto commitment. This is still a live issue in many of our communities. It's something that desperately matters in terms of how you build that trust in policing, how you build trust in institutions. Was there a cover-up? We need to know the answers.
And also the rights and dignity of the people involved, whose children now, like Alex, are alive and kicking.
Okay, Mark?
Look, I think it was a manifesto pledge, and I think it's the right thing to do to honour your manifesto or the Labour Party manifesto. To me, I'm a bit with you on this, Ian. It's kind of if we were a few years afterwards, it would be very relevant. Having said that, occasionally you're going to find that there are sort of big wrongs that have happened, and there are lessons which weren't learned from this type of thing. So if I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, I'd say, if we can find some lessons that we didn't learn at the time or we haven't learned subsequently that we now learn as a result of this inquiry, then it would have been worth doing.
Right, our fun question is from Lauren in Exeter. The Girl Guiding Movement has released new badges to recognise girls' skills at activities, including being good at interior design, reading and reviewing books, and even being a food critic. But which special skill did you have as a child which you want to tell the world about? Maybe you got a badge for it from the Scouts or the Girl Guides or even the Brownies. Ali?
I was going to say I did the Running Man at school, which is this sort of dance that you do in it's sort of hip-hop. That's as far as I got. But I was going to say that I used to give medical talks at school because I was going to become an infertility specialist. It never happened. Don't ask why, but I just went to the Lister Hospital once and I really liked it. I went with the FT and the guy said, "You're wasting your time, go to the city." So I did. Never ended up being a doctor. My mum's still disappointed because she is one.
Alex?
Well, I was never a Girl Guide or a Brownie, but I was an Air Cadet, and I absolutely loved it. So I had a lot of badges, and I was quite the crack shot marksman in my time, believe it or not, Ian. So, yeah, something I did receive a badge for.
I am duly warned.
So this isn't something that the world will be interested in, but I think the skill I enjoyed most was climbing trees. And I don't know whether I would want a badge for that, not particularly. I mean, I just enjoyed it.
You were a tom girl.
I was a tom. But I was a brownie, I got all the badges were like, I remember making lemon curd, if anybody knows what lemon curd is.
Disgusting.
And that was some kind of home keepers. They're all rather domestic.
Yeah, they would have been very sexy.
So I think I would like a different kind of badge.
Mark?
Also, this isn't a skill, but I was a Sea Scout when I was 11 or 12 years old, and I was thrown out for a reason I can't remember what it was. But I felt
yes, you can. Come on out.
Well, I might have been being precocious or something, but I felt it was I was very much wrong. So I would like to see a badge for victims of a miscarriage of justice from the scout leader of the 13th Camberwell Sea Scouts.
As the Minister for Miscarriages of Justice, I'll look into it for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, well, thank you all very much indeed. I think this is, of all the cross questions we've done this year, this is certainly in the top 5. Could even be number 1.
We get a bonus.
No.
Should we get a badge?
You should get a badge, you're absolutely right. Now, on tomorrow's panel, we have the independent peer and former Northern Ireland First Minister, Baroness Arlene Foster, Labour MP Kat Eccles, plus a couple of political journalists, Jack Elsom, the new political editor of The Sun, and Anne McElvoy from Politico. Coming up in the next hour, the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, is coming on holiday to the Cotswolds. Can you believe? Will you be welcoming him with open arms if you see him for a cream tea in a cafe in the Cotswolds? Or would you want to protest the fact that he's even here? Because there are some people who say, well, it's outrageous that he's coming to this country. We will protest. I don't think you should really disrupt somebody's family holiday, no matter who they are, but particularly because they are the Vice President of the United States. Do you agree? 0345 6060 973. And if there are protests, what form should these protests take?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. The Foreign Secretary says he utterly condemns the killing of civilians at Gaza aid sites. David Lammy signed a statement with 24 other countries calling for an end to the war. Meanwhile, senior Labour MP Emily Thornberry said it's time for the UK to recognise a Palestinian state. But Hilary Wainwright, a political activist and journalist, told LBC there are other things the government should be addressing.
I think the main thing that Britain can do now is stop arming Israel. It withdrew 30 out of